Alright guys, so now that we have a basic understanding of Bootstrap and what it is and what it does, I figured we just get right into it and visit the Bootstrap website, which is a huge resource, and while you're learning Bootstrap, you'll be going back and forth from this site quite a bit. Now, one thing that I need to clarify is there are two major versions of Bootstrap. The earlier version is 2.3, which is actually still widely used, and then there's the latest version, which is Bootstrap 3. And there is kind of a big difference in terms of class names. So if you know some of Bootstrap 2.3, then some of the class names that you knew might not work in Bootstrap 3. So if you Google Bootstrap, the first result is actually the 2.3 version, the older version, and then the next one at getbootstrap.com is version 3. So if we open up getbootstrap.com, it looks like this. All right, so this is the layout for the latest Bootstrap. If we open the other one, it looks like this. So this is all Bootstrap 2.3. If you click on the components and everything, it gives you the class names for Bootstrap 2.3. We're not going to really focus on this version. We're going to focus on the newest version, which is version 3. So I'm going to close that 2.3 website up. So like I said, this will be a huge resource when developing Bootstrap. There's a ton of code you can copy and customize. So we will download it in a bit, but I just want to go through the site just a little bit. This is the home page, which just basically has download buttons to get the actual files. If we click on Get Started, it gives you some information about how to download Bootstrap, what it consists of. Here's a very basic hierarchy of the Bootstrap files. And let's actually look at those for a second. So the files, you actually don't get any HTML files. You get the CSS, the JavaScript, and you get those glyph icons, which we'll show a little bit later, which are basically these little icons that you can use on your site. You have to create the index file yourself, but if we go down here, you can see a basic template, which is very basic. There's actually pretty much nothing on this except for a heading, but it shows you how to link in the CSS, the JavaScript, things like that. You have to include jQuery if you want to use the JavaScript file. And here we have, these are really helpful. These are some examples of very basic sites or frameworks. So if we have the starter template, we can open this and check it out, and it's got a nice clean navigation and then just some text in the middle. So that's pretty much just a starting point. All of these are starting points, really. These aren't meant to be full websites. Here we have an example of the grid system, which is really helpful. To get this grid, all you need to do is use these classes. So this call/md/4 class is actually 4 columns. All right, so there's 12 columns total, and this is 4 of them. This is 4 and this is 4. So obviously 4 times 3 is 12. Here we have a 3 column, 6 column, and another 3 column. And here we have an 8 column and then a 4 column. So we could use this for the main content and then the sidebar. All right, so the grid system is really helpful. Some developers don't like using grid systems for the reason that they might be limiting or restricting. But if you know what you're doing, there's not too many layouts that you can't create with a system like this. You can nest them, as you can see. You can nest the columns, mobile and desktop, and these are all responsive, by the way. These are all, if we look, that's not sorry, that's not my browser window, that's my virtual machine window. Let me just, you can see they're very responsive. All right, so that's the grid system. Let's see. Let's look at some of these other templates. So here we have a nav bar with a login, and this is basically called a jumbotron, which is just a big showcase area. And then we have these 3 blocks here. So these are each 4 columns. Okay, so basically here's a more narrow look. Oh, whoops, didn't mean to do that. Let's get back there. Okay, so we even have a login page. So if you take a look at this, we have a nice clean login if we wanted to build an application using Bootstrap. Sticky footer. So a lot of people have trouble with CSS and getting the footer to actually stick to the bottom of the site. This is a good example. And they don't actually give you the code. You can't see the code on the documentation, but all you need to do is look at the source code. And you can basically copy the whole thing and put it in your own file. So we'll actually do that in this section, in this video. So before we do that, I just want to go over some of the other stuff here. So if we click on CSS, in the left-hand side here, you have this navigation with all different kinds of basically coding bits. The overview shows you you got to use the HTML5 doc type. It tells you that it's mobile first, which we talked about. Responsive images, setting your images to 1%, things like that. And then if you click on grid system, this basically goes over what we just saw. If we scroll down, you can see here's another demonstration, and this here is an example of using single columns for all 12 columns. And then we have these other layouts, and it gives us the markup right here. So to get this 12 column layout, we just need to create a row div, a div with the class of row, and then we want divs with the class of call/md/1. And same thing down here. If we have an 8 column and a 4 column, that's all we have to do is give them these classes. If you've had experience with Bootstrap 2.3, this markup is new. These class names. In 2.3, you would use things like span 4 for a 4 column or span 8. It's a little different in version 3. Let's see, typography. We have shows our headings, shows the sizes, secondary text next to the heading. Pretty much just standard stuff. That's how the paragraph would look. Here's a paragraph with the class of lead, so it just makes it a little bigger. You might use this for a slideshow or something like that. Emphasis and boldness, things like that. Let's see, if we click on code, this is basically if you want to embed code inside your page so that people can actually see the HTML. Let's see, tables. These tables here are very nice, clean, and formatted, and all you need to do to get this look is to add a class of table. That's all you have to do. It'll do the borders, the padding, the margins, everything. Here we have striped rows. So if we use this HTML, just give it a class of table striped, and we'll get this nice in and out effect, this dark light, which normally you would have to do a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of CSS coding. When you're using this framework, it's very, very easy. Bordered table, so we have tables with borders. It's good for invoices, things like that. Hover rows, you can see as I hover over a row, it gets darker. All we need to do this is to add table hover. That's it. Condensed tables. Let's see, forms. So here's a basic example of a form. You can see it's nice and clean. Margins are good. And we get the markup right here. We can get all that code. So we basically just copy and paste this and change the fields if you want name or whatever. We have inline forms, so you don't have to do any of the floating or anything yourself. Just pop in this little block of code and you'll get this nice layout, this nice inline look. Here's a horizontal form. I'm sorry, that's a horizontal form. No, this is the horizontal form. So nice and clean. So we have different inputs, text area, checkboxes and radios. And again, it gives you all the HTML, so you can use Bootstrap basically without even knowing HTML, just knowing how it's put together. You don't even need to know all the tags and attributes and things like that. I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend learning HTML first. Down here, if we click on buttons, Bootstrap has some real nice buttons, all different colors, different hover colors, and here's all the code for that. Sizes, so these are different sizes you can use just by using these class names, button large. Block level buttons, active, disabled buttons. So images, so if you look here, we can actually add a nice border to an image or even have a circular image just by using these classes. So if we add this class of image rounded, any image that we use this class with is going to be rounded, and I think that looks really nice and clean depending on what kind of picture it is. So helper and responsive utilities, we'll go over that later. If we click on components, there's a whole nother area of code we can use. These are really cool, these little icons. These are actually the classes you can use, and these will show up. And there's just a ton of them. There's a whole bunch of them, and they're very easy to use. All you need to do is add this span tag. You add this anywhere in your code, and the little icons will show up. Here's an example. So we have a button with the text star, and inside the button we added a span class. Okay, and that's showing the star. That's it. Drop downs. So we have some code for drop downs. This isn't the nav bar. We'll get into that in a second. Alignment, headers. I'm not going to go through every little thing here. Button groups. You can group buttons, so that's really good for maybe an admin panel or something like that. Let's see. Button drop downs. So these are buttons. These aren't meant to be navigation links. They're just drop down buttons. Let's see. Input groups. Navbar. Navbar is one of the most helpful components in Bootstrap. You can see we have this nice navbar with links, and we have a nice drop down, a form. You can put forms in your navbars, drop downs, and this is the code here to get exactly this. So it's very handy. You can easily say you don't want the search form, you can easily take that out right here. This form. You can take the form and add it to the right side if you want, just by moving it into this div, navbar right. So it's very, very easy to work with. Here's another example of a form in the navbar. Buttons in the navbar, text, and you can see you just have these classes, navbar text. So once you know the classes, you won't need to come to this site as often, but when you're first getting into learning Bootstrap, this site is just a savior. We can fix the navbar to the top so that when we scroll down it stays there, just like in the Bootstrap site. You can see the navbar is staying there no matter what. You can also fix it to the bottom by just adding this class here. Inverted navbar, you see this a lot, the darker version. And to do this, all you need to do is add the inverse class. Breadcrumbs, nice breadcrumbs. Pagination, okay, so that's the pagination markup. Labels, badges. So we can have, for instance, if you're building like a message application, you can have the number of messages, whatever. Jumbotron is basically just a big showcase area with text, and we could put a background image, and this is the markup for it. Very, very simple. Page header. So you can see here, this is basically a header, thumbnails. This custom content here, these little blocks are really handy, maybe on your home page. Alerts, you can have success alerts, error alerts, things like that. You can put links inside of your alerts. Progress bars, there's even an animated progress bar. So you can see you have basically any UI tool that you need. You can customize any part of the interface. Alright, so JavaScript, you have to include the bootstrap.js file to get any of this functionality. So transitions, we have model boxes, so pop-ups like this. If we have a little demo here, so we can have pages inside pop-up boxes like this. The drop downs, again, these are also in the component section. Let's see, tabbed, we have tabbed interfaces, nice jQuery effects, tooltips, okay, nice tooltips, popovers, alerts, so we can have alerts with buttons. So there's a lot we can do here. Carousel, that's a real nice function. We can have a nice little slideshow. Very little markup considering what it does. Alright, and then we have the customize link where we can include certain things in certain components and generate a file instead of using just the entire file. And what allows us to do that is less. And less is basically a CSS programming language, which allows us to pick and choose. Let's see, common CSS. So if we say we're not going to use the grid system, we could uncheck that and we won't get that code. Alright, so it just makes it that much more lightweight. I personally don't really do this. I usually grab the whole file, but if you're someone that likes to only use resources that you know you're going to use, then this is a good idea. Down here you can also choose which jQuery plugins you want to use, and here we can use less variables. Like I said, less is basically somewhat of a CSS programming languages in that you can use variables, so we can change the variables here. The color system, scaffolding, typography, all kinds of things, headings, media query, breakpoints you can change, components, buttons. It's just a ton of stuff that you can customize. Alright, so that's basically the entire site. If you click on the About link, that'll give you a little history, pretty much what we've already gone over. The core team, so Mark Otto and Jacob Thornton are the main creators of Bootstrap. It gives you a link to the blog, community, things like that, translations. So that's the entire site in a nutshell. So what I want to do now is I want to actually not download, but copy one of those templates and just get that up and running. So the first thing we need to do is actually download Bootstrap. Let's see, I'm just going to save it there. And when you click on and open the zip file, you'll get this folder called dist for distribution, and in that is all the Bootstrap main files. Alright, so CSS, fonts, and JavaScript. So let's create a new folder, and I'm just going to call it template. And let's just bring these over. And we're not going to start, we're going to do a project in this part, but we're not going to start it in this movie. I just want to get one of these templates up and running so you can see. So I'm going to create a new document and call that index.html. I'm going to open it with Notepad++, and I want to go to one of those templates under getting started. So we'll take this one. This has a lot of content. So if we do a Control U, we'll get the source code. So basically we can copy this whole thing and let's paste that in our index file. Now there's a few things we need to change for this to work. First of all, actually let's just save it and see what we got. So we have all the markup, but it's not styled, and the reason it's not styled is we don't have it pointed to the correct file. If we look, it's actually pointing to just somewhere else, /dist/css. So we have ours right in our CSS folder, so let's just get rid of this here. And let's see, we don't have the Jumbotron CSS yet. We can get that from the template, but I just want to see what it will look like without that. And down here you can see they're using a jQuery CDN, so we don't have to worry about including jQuery. What we do want to do is get rid of this here so that it's pointing to js/bootstrap.min.js. Now you'll see bootstrap.min.css and min.js. All this min means is that it's minified. So it's all bunched together to save on resources, as opposed to being nice and laid out and with comments and things like that, because we're not really meant to edit these files. So using the minified version is fine, and using the uncompiled version is fine as well. It's not going to really take up a lot of resources. So let's save this and see what happens. So here is our template. Basically, all we did was point it to that CSS and JavaScript file. And I'm not even sure, I don't even think we need the JavaScript for this. So you can see it's a very, very quick way to get a mock-up up and running. So you can change this, add a background image, maybe add some borders and use some of the Bootstrap classes. So that's basically Bootstrap in a nutshell. Next we'll be actually starting our own project, and we'll get into working with the classes and the code ourselves.